Busted. Steve Bannon admits he helped plot January 6th Trump rally to, quote, kill Biden presidency in the crib. Ladies and gentlemen, we got him. Steve Bannon confessed. It's all over. The insurrection has been solved. It was him the whole time. And now surely the police will move in to end this reign of terror. The current state of American politics, my friends. The current state of American politics. Steve Bannon, here's the story. Basically said he helped organize a rally. That's the end of the story. Have a nice day. But what do we get? We are getting wave after wave of all of these stories on the mainstream media, like Steve Bannon admits he was involved. They were trying to, kill the Biden presidency in the crib, which is a quote. They're saying that it was clearly seditious conspiracy and that the government must move in and make arrests. And this is how they keep people in the cult. It's really funny when I say something like, Hillary Clinton, 30,000 emails, no criminal charges, nothing's ever done, violation of public trust, Ukraine, Burisma, Joe Biden, all of these things. There's never any action. It's funny when Trump supporters are like, the Durham report, Russiagate, where's accountability? And the left comes out and says, Steve Bannon, where's the accountability? Russia, Alpha Bank, where's the accountability? Here's the funny thing. Some of us live in objective reality and some of us don't. The objective reality is that there was no insurrection. There wasn't one. The FBI says there wasn't one. They found no evidence of any plot to overthrow anything. It was a bunch of dumb people rioting. They had no idea what they were doing. Seemingly random. Even with their informants and all of that stuff, nothing. But the left still insists it was an insurrection, even when there are quite literally no charges against anyone having to do with anything related to sedition or insurrection or conspiracy. They just believe it. And because they believe the lie, it's easy to push fake news stories like this. Absolutely amazing. Here's what I love. You can see our ground news bias-o-meter, and 100% of the reporting on this story, only 3 sources, is from the left. That's right. Why? Because on the right, they know there was no insurrection, so this is a non-story. Hundreds of thousands of people showed up in Washington, D.C. on January 6th for a rally to watch Donald Trump speak. And then they left. Some people during Trump's speech made their way to the Capitol or were at the Capitol, and a riot broke out. It was a bad riot. People, I think, who rioted should be charged. And first of all, all these people, man, there's so many people who really, really want some advocacy for violence. It's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. They're like, Tim says to stand up, but then gets mad when people try to break into the Capitol. I'm like, what about standing in a building makes you think you're going to do anything with the government? It's like nothing was accomplished that day other than breaking into a building, disrupting the Electoral College vote. I suppose if that's what you wanted to do, sure, fine. But did it help anyone? Did it advance your cause? Man, pay attention. Now, there's challenges with overt tyranny like what's happening in Australia. I'm not a fan of violence. Because ultimately, it will be used against you. It's de-persuasive. It scares people. I get it, though. You've got to take a look at the bigger picture. In Australia, the police are engaging in violence as well. And that could scare people, too. So it depends on what's happening. But all in all, if you have a video of police, 2 cops spraying a 74-year-old woman as she lays on the ground writhing in pain, that is good for your cause. When you have videos of people, some guy they're calling Australian Rambo, chokeholding cops, that's bad for your cause. So the simple solution is this. Do not be the one to engage in violence. Be the one to engage in nonviolent civil disobedience, like blocking streets and blocking buildings. And yes, you can get charged for those things. Typically, it's a slap on the wrist because they're not really crimes. They'll just say you're obstructing a roadway or something. But then what happens is, Occupy Wall Street. Let me take you way back in time and explain something. Occupy Wall Street was struggling to get a footing. The first weekend, I suppose, there was a decent amount of people there. I wasn't there immediately for that, but I was there in the first week, I think day 3, which was like a Monday maybe. And there was 17 people in the park. It was raining, and a cop walked up, and he was wearing a raincoat, and he saw a bunch of us standing under a tarp. And he's like, man, you guys, you got conviction, passion. And he smiled and he walked away. No, nobody was there. Now, the next weekend, a lot of people showed up. I believe it was several hundred, maybe 1,000. because, people come out on the weekends, right? This time they wanted to march through New York. A man named Anthony Bologna walked up to 4 women who were not in the protest group, who were standing on the side. They were activists, but they were standing on the sidewalk, and he pepper sprayed them. And at the time, my understanding, it was the fastest viral video on the internet. It was over 1 million views in less than 1 day. At the time, we had not seen anything like this back in 2011. Maybe, but I'm pretty sure it was the first time we saw that kind of explosive growth in a single day. And I actually know the people who uploaded that video. 1.2 million views or whatever within a day. And it was just 4 women standing on the sidewalk saying, like, what are you doing? And then he just sprays them all in the face and starts screaming, and they fall to the ground. That created Occupy Wall Street. 4 young women upset over a police arrests of activists getting brutalized for no reason. You see, and that's why I tell people, violence doesn't work. Maybe before the internet era, when you wanted to take control of a building because controlling the building meant that you had governmental power for some reason. In today's day and age, we're mostly digitized. Our lines of communication cannot be broken so easily. Standing in a building doesn't do anything, and hurting people is just wrong anyway. True of the police. So when you have video of cops brutalizing people, those people gain public support and their cause moves farther. As for what happened with Black Lives Matter, everything spiraled out of control. That being said, they're claiming Biden had something to do with the violence, which he did not. Here's the story. Let me show you what they're saying, because you're going to get a kick out of it. Raw Story says, busted. Steve Bannon admits he helped plot January 6th Trump rally. Yeah, and? They say conservative broadcaster Steve Bannon admitted on Wednesday that he had plotted with President Trump to kill the Biden presidency in the crib ahead of the Jan 6 attack on the U.S. Capitol. Isn't it amazing how they lie? So if you live in the cult, let me just, no seditious conspiracy charges emerge in U.S. Capitol riots. FBI finds no evidence that January 6th was an organized plot to overturn the presidential election. Now that we've established those things, for those of you who might be a leftist who find your way to this video, can I just tell you, please, there was no insurrection. The FBI says no seditious conspiracy. No one's been charged with insurrection. It was a bunch of idiots rioting and trying to break into the Capitol and ultimately accomplished nothing and then left. And most of the people are seen walking around. They're walking through the velvet ropes, not messing things up. Police opening the doors and letting them in. Sorry, not an insurrection. FBI finds no evidence of a conspiracy or plot. How much more do you need? Then you read this. Let this please be a wake-up call to the fact that this is a lie. Here's how they play it. Steve Bannon did help organize a rally. According to this statement, that's basically what he was talking about. The rally had several 100,000 people. 99% of those people left. That's it. Trump was still speaking when the rioters went to the Capitol. Okay? So when Steve Bannon says he helped organize a rally, it was getting a bunch of people to wave little American flags and listen to Trump speak. That's it. They go on to say, during his War Room broadcast, Bannon played clips of journalists Robert Costa and Bob Woodward explaining how events unfolded prior to the January 6th riot. You look at January 5th. We discovered that Steve Bannon, the former White House strategist, was there at the Willard Hotel, blocks from the White House with Rudy Giuliani, having an almost war room type meeting with other Trump allies the eve before the January 6th insurrection. There was no insurrection. If you don't trust the FBI, then do you just believe political pundits saying it was an insurrection? Okay, fine. The FBI is corrupt. There you go. Sure, that's the only answer. Biden's Department of Justice is corrupt and unwilling. Fine. Costa recently explained MSNBC. And Bannon had actually been in close touch with President Trump for days before January 6th. Based on our reporting, he privately told President Trump to have a reckoning on January 6th, and he said to the president, it's time to kill the Biden presidency in the crib. Bannon seemed proud to confirm that the conversation had taken place. Quote, yeah, because his legitimacy, Bannon said of Biden, 42% of the American people think Biden did not win the presidency legitimately. And I think that's a huge problem. Because it doesn't matter what you think is true. And I tell these people all the time, obviously there's objective facts and there is truth, but it doesn't matter what you think is true. It matters how people feel. And if you have a large amount of people who feel something and they're incorrect about what's happening, they're going to get violent and it's going to break down. It's a shame because I wish truth was the end all be all. But it's not. I mean, you look here and they say Bannon admits to the, they're trying to make it seem like he planned the insurrection, right? First of all, as I stated, there wasn't one. The FBI says there was no plan. You certainly would think they looked into Steve Bannon. There was no plan for any of this. The plan was a big rally. They wanted 1 million people to show up and say no and have this like large American flag waving thing. Quote, it killed itself, he continued. Just look at what his illegitimate regime is doing. It killed itself, okay? But we told you from the very beginning, we just expose it. Just expose it. Never back down. Never give up, and this thing will implode. Yes. Let me give you the truth. Steve Bannon certainly has his opinions I completely disagree with. I argued with Bannon about voter fraud. Sorry, you know what? There's so many people, and I think Bannon, who want to believe in this big voter fraud narrative because I think they've been conned in this. I think they've been tricked into believing this stuff. Let me explain something to you. Is fraud possible? Yes. Does fraud happen? It does. Bill Barr said it. Is it on a massive scale with this grand conspiracy? I really do not believe so. And I say that because, of course, sure, conspiracies can exist, but let me explain. You had, and many of you know this already, Pennsylvania, Republicans made universal mail-in voting. They passed that a year before the election in violation of their state constitution. The shadow campaign to save the election. They come out and tell you what they did. You don't need to go on a wild goose chase to know what's happening. And while you are distracted with this narrative, what's not happening is reform that's going to secure our elections. You see, here's what happens. Universal mail-in voting. Early voting. Combine these things and what happens? Democrat activists can go out. You do not need any kind of fraud for this to work, and it is the simplest solution with the least amount of assumptions. We know universal mail-in balloting happened. We know that Pennsylvania did it in violation of the state constitution. A lower court judge said that the plaintiffs would likely win on the merits, challenging the constitutionality of allowing universal mail-in ballots. Do Republicans go door to door? No. Almost all Republicans are voting on the day, or I should say the overwhelming majority of Republicans and independents vote day of. Democrats overwhelmingly vote early. Why? Because Democrats go door to door and say, did you vote yet? No. See that thing on the ground right there? That's your ballot. Fill it out. And they say, I don't know, just fill it out. Put it right back in the mailbox. Mailman will come and take it. Republicans aren't doing that. So when you see that Democratic votes are overwhelmingly mail-in, sure, you can make assumptions about fraud and harvesting and all that stuff, and there's probably some of that there. We did see a guy arrested on forgery charges having 300 recall ballots, but 300 is not enough individually. Now, perhaps you can argue, oh, but there's probably tons of it. Great, there's no evidence. Okay, there's evidence of individual instances. There was evidence in North Jersey, and I respect all of that. I think it all should be shot down and should be investigated. But I tell you right now, the only thing you need to worry about is mail-in voting has given Democrats the ability to go out and tell people, vote, do this, do that, get the job done. Now, if you still believe beyond that there's widespread fraud or whatever, okay, I don't think you need to even consider that. Why? Because if the issue is that Democrats are using mail-in voting to advantage themselves because in dense population areas, you can hit more homes than in conservative rural areas, that to me is the greatest reason why we should not have it. You should have to go and vote in person. You see, in Republican areas, if you're going to go door to door, the houses are far away, especially in very rural areas. It's very difficult for someone to go door to door. But if you're in a city and they send 1,000 ballots to one apartment complex because you have families and young people and roommates, 2 Democrat operatives can go door to door asking people if they voted yet and hit 1,000 people in the span of probably an hour. Knock on the door. Hey, we're with, gettovote.org or whatever. Did you fill out your ballot? It's right there. They just delivered them. You got it? That's great. You can fill it out right now. All you got to do is give it to your mailman, and that will dramatically increase the amount of ballots they get. By all means, do your audits, investigate the stuff, but I think the priority should be on reform, saying no to universal mail-in voting because it is too insecure and advantages Democrats based on structure of urban, of cities and population density, and that should not be a good reason. Now, we can counter that and say Democrats can say, well, then our local polling stations are too crowded. Simple, have another polling station or add more polls to more voting booths. That being said, let's read. Lawrence Tribe says, it'd be hard to justify DOJ inaction in the face of this rapidly mounting evidence of a criminal conspiracy to commit sedition against the U.S. government and to give aid and comfort to an insurrection. Lawrence Tribe. It's amazing that this guy he's like a law professor or whatever, and he has no idea what's going on in the world. There was no conspiracy. There was no sedition. Steve Bannon is not talking about storming into the Capitol. He's talking about a rally. And this is the narrative they push. Here you go. Sarah Kenzier says, thread from February, don't act like the Bannon coup plotting is some revelation. We knew about it in real time. Ask why the DOJ and Congress refused to hold him accountable. We did. Good investigative journalism, Sarah. We did. We did ask why they're not holding him accountable. And it's really simple. FBI finds no evidence that January 6th was an organized plot to overturn presidential election. No seditious conspiracy charges emerge in U.S. Capitol riot cases. What more do these people want? Russiagate was bunk. The Ukraine gate was bunk. The insurrection narrative is a lie. It was dumb people rioting. And you know what? They're being arrested and they're being charged. And the charges are very insane, in my opinion. I mean, what they did was bad. It's the Capitol. We shouldn't tolerate it. But the reaction is just absolutely absurd. So here we go. We have a viral trend on Twitter where they're claiming Bannon did it. And these people live in psychotic Wall-E world of distorted reality. Now, do Trump supporters live in psychotic Wall-E world of distorted reality? Many of them do, actually. Yes, but not a substantive portion and none with institutional power. I can have a conversation with some of the most prominent Trump supporters and conservatives, people like Jack Posobiec, and the criticism they have of Jack is that he's he's far right. It's like, well, did you say he was wrong? Jack's opinions are not far right. The information he talks about is typically verified, sourced mainstream news and human events and reporting and things like that. So when you have a prominent mainstream left with viral trends based on crackpot conspiracy lies that have already been debunked, and then you have a conspiracy faction with no institutional authority, who am I supposed to be concerned about? So throwing it back to that YouTube study that said there's the left, the center, the right, and the exclusively critical of left. That's what they called me and people like Dave Rubin a few years ago. Now they just say centrist or you must be right wing. That's right. If you are critical of the lies and the psychotic behavior from the left, that means you are right wing. It's amazing, isn't it? That's how they define left and right. It's nonsensical. My political opinions, policy positions, idealistic vision of the world is rather left wing. And I don't mean left wing in the like French Revolution sense. I mean it in the economic sense. But what does it mean to be left and right? At this point, it seems nothing. Tribal signifiers. I suppose what they're saying is that left and right are you for the revolution or opposed to the revolution? And the funny thing is, in the French Revolution, they said those on the right of the in the room were were anti-revolution, and those on the left were for the revolution. That's where it comes from, right? And the left were socialists. My political positions and idealistic positions are center-left in terms of revolution. What does that mean? I don't think the U.S. government should be destroyed or dismantled or anything like that, like the left does. They want to tear it down. They want a revolution. No, I think the American way of government is brilliant and it protects liberty. However, I am a staunch reformist in favor of some leftist economic policies. It must be done through peaceful, persuasive resourcefulness and conversation and agreement. And you have a conversation with people and you learn where your compromise is. And that's why it's so difficult for there to be a left libertarian system. I do think there can be a moderate libertarian system. And so what I mean by revolution, the Federal Reserve is really, really awful. The federal government is corrupt. Our politicians are crooked. We have all these problems. We need to weed out the corruption in our system. I don't think through revolution. I think through reform. I think through peaceful, persuasive discussions. I think through strong grassroots organizing, Tea Party, for instance, things like that. And to a certain respect, absolutely Occupy Wall Street. They for the most part, were very opposed to the violence. And I think they lost that. And that's what's hurting them. Now you have Antifa going around smashing stuff and they tolerate it. They support it. They cheer for it. We need to reform this country, no doubt. Protect the working class, get rid of these corrupt institutions, end the forever wars, get our troops out of these foreign countries, bolster our nation's borders. I'm all for immigration 100%, just the proper way so we can protect the migrants from some smugglers, from cartels, from the dangers of traversing the desert. And I think we want to bring our manufacturing back. That's not revolution. It's just reform. So that puts me kind of in the middle. Not right wing saying we must stop and defend all the institutions and keep them the same. No, I think we got a lot of problems in this country that need to be changed. So I'm absolutely for dramatic change in this country through conversations and through discussions so we can truly progress and make things better by solving our problems. The modern version of the left is just hysterical crackpots who believe in insane conspiracies about Russia, which is debunked, and Ukraine, which is debunked, and the FBI insurrection, the insurrection claims all debunked. FBI says nothing. And now, even after it's already been debunked, they're like, Bannon admitted it. You know what? If you can't get to these people and explain to them, then what do you really do? How do you solve for this? It's a challenge, isn't it? No, I just think we're on the verge of collapse. And I hate to say it, but I think we're on the verge of collapse. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.